The following is how Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski, and Krystal reacted to Nancy Pelosi making her support for Donald Trump's October 2020 stimulus plan contingent on specific demands to highlight what she wanted in the bill. It's important to note that while Pelosi was obviously playing politics and would never do this under a Democratic president, then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had already signaled he would not vote for Trump's stimulus plan either. After this video montage, I'll show you how these three leftist commentators did a 180 once it became Biden's stimulus package being voted on.
This deal was on the table. Nancy Pelosi said, no deal. She said the, quote, heart of the matter is that Trump's administration's refusal to adopt national coronavirus testing and tracing plan is a non-starter.
If you actually care about the people who are lining up at food banks, the kids who are going hungry, the families about to get their lights and gas shut off heading into the bitter winter months, the restaurant owners whose dreams are all going up in smoke, the airline workers who've been kicked to the curb by the thousands, this is about as good as it's going to get.
The incompetent criminals ruling the United States are about to push millions of Americans off a terrifying financial cliff.
So she was saying, listen, I understand people need money. The deal's on the table. However, since your deal doesn't include anything on coronavirus testing and tracing, we're done here.
It is cruel political calculus from Pelosi, playing games with people's lives.
She's the resistance. Steph, did you know that? Did you know that Nancy Pelosi is the resistance? What she's resisting is relief to people for the coronavirus. That's what she's resisting.
What should be done? Listen, I mean, I would take the deal. I would take this deal. Whatever things are in there that are issues, it's a bullet that you can and should bite to help families who desperately need it.
This is not about what's good for Americans. It's about political power. And frankly, it's disgusting.
I don't know if Nancy knows this. But unemployment was supposed to be temporary. Now it's permanent for 4 million people, while she's the most powerful person in Congress.
I mean, this is way past due anyway. People literally can't pay the bills. So you got to get the money to them.
Even this $1.8 trillion proposal, the Senate GOP is unlikely to go along with. Do you think you're going to get better than that? You think you're going to get more money than that?
Hey, Nancy, it's us about to be homeless. Hi, Nancy. It's us about to be homeless.
Now, you know, another thing that they could do, which they won't do, but if I was Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, I would say, I would call their bluff and accept this deal and then let the Senate Republicans slap it down and point the finger at them.
Anyone who values humanity over this posturing should make their voices heard. Take this deal.
And that's a picture of hundreds of Kentucky residents wait in line outside the Kentucky Career Center for help with their unemployment claims.
You could just pass a standalone, clean stimulus bill.
It might not be perfect, but an unrealized imaginary perfection is not going to keep the babies fed and the electric on when the winter turns cold.
Nancy Pelosi is trying to stop Trump from giving people something so they'll vote for him. So Nancy Pelosi is your enemy, not Trump in this situation.
This is a really, really bad moment. It's a bad moment for the American people. It's a bad moment for the Democrats.
And we saw the way that the initial unemployment plus up really, truly helped people. Poverty actually went down. Like, take the deal.
You're going to have a colossal wave of evictions, foreclosures, homelessness, suicide, desperation, despair, all of that stuff.
And their betrayal of the working class, the betrayal of the poor, the working class, the immigrants, students, the elderly. Nancy Pelosi and Christine Pelosi are the garbage people who have betrayed them.
It's a bad moment for a potential future left-wing movement. And we got to acknowledge the reality. It's a crime that there isn't a stimulus that already happened. It's a crime.
You heard it. Pelosi is playing politics. She's inflicting harm on Americans by leveraging her vote. Just pass the Trump stimulus bill and let those who voted against it take the heat. So obviously they wouldn't want any Democrat to block Biden's stimulus and inflict more harm on suffering Americans, right?
So the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill is, it passed the Senate. It's going to pass the House. There's a lot of good stuff in this bill. People need the help. You have the $3,000 child tax credit, which would cut child poverty in half. You have the $300 a month unemployment. You have the $1,400 stimulus checks. You have relief for states that were getting obliterated as a result of COVID.
And also, I was looking at the numbers. If you compare this one with some of the previous packages under Trump, the help goes much more to individuals and families than it does to businesses. A much, much larger chunk going directly to individuals.
It basically saves over 1 million people's pensions.
That's another thing.
This stimulus bill is popular among everybody, including Republicans. It has way more than majority support.
Well, this bill, in many ways, is a phenomenal piece of legislation.
We should be happy that we moved the Overton window to the point where we have things to complain about, but which are still pretty good.
$2,000 checks and the $15 minimum wage. It's not in there.
The thing is, if 6 out of the 10 House Democrats draw a line in the sand and say they aren't voting for a COVID relief bill without a minimum wage hike in it, they become instant megastars.
Being willing to go hard enough to say, look, I'm going to blow this whole thing up if we don't get $15 minimum wage in the package. That would be actual hardball.
That is colossally depressing.
And you didn't flex the leverage that you obviously and actually do have.
First of all, why is it that centrists always go so much harder than the progressives?
Yeah.
Bernie is giving his good friend Joe progressive cover.
People are literally dying in the streets, and she doesn't seem to have any urgency, doesn't seem to give a shit.
Manchin would be totally willing to blow something up because he doesn't like
already.
that. You know, I mean, he's just always willing to walk away, go to the mat.
If they were Republicans, they probably would fight.
Now, she's technically for $15 minimum wage if she doesn't have to do anything to get it.
If they were Republicans, they wouldn't fall in line. They would hold out for what they wanted.
It's not unacceptable. It is acceptable because Bernie Sanders just told us it's a great bill and you're all going to vote for it today.
Honestly, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Hey, let's push Biden. Let's say that our votes are contingent on something.
Even the committees that she and other progressive members wanted to be put on, they were even shut down at that. So it's hard to see how the current strategy is really working.
If those over 20 House Democrats voted as a bloc, the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill would not be able to pass. I mean, this is way past due anyway. People literally can't pay the bills. So you got to get the money to them.
Reminder, you and a handful of progressives could band together and refuse to pass the bill without the $15 minimum wage. Hey, Nancy, it's us about to be homeless. Hi, Nancy, it's us about to be homeless.
The only people who had the power to force them to do that were those over 20 House Democrats.
All it takes is political courage. If you do that, if you do not, then you also believe that these poverty wages are acceptable. That is a fact.
You said $15 minimum wage. You said it. I didn't make you say it. You said it.
Gee, if you and say 4 to 6 other members of the House had it within your power to vote no on a piece of must-pass legislation in order to make sure $15 an hour was included in the bill before you'd vote yes on it, that would mean using leverage, something you don't want to do.
But there's a difference between tweeting and using power, leveraging power to really put pressure on legislators who aren't willing to go the distance.
And you got to be able to walk away. I mean, that's the bottom line. These moderates are willing to say, hey, we're not going to vote for this if we don't get a tax cut for the rich in the SALT cap removal. So, you've got to be...
That's my favorite.
You got to be willing to actually walk away. It might not be perfect, but an unrealized imaginary perfection is not going to keep the babies fed and the electric on when the winter turns cold.
You said $15 minimum wage. We're not voting for this bill unless it has a $15 minimum wage in there. I mean, I would take the deal. I would take this deal. Whatever things are in there that are issues, it's a bullet that you can and should bite to help families who desperately need it.
These people tweet, they don't fight.
They didn't fight. They didn't fight.
It's true that if you and 5 other progressives refuse to sign the bill without $15 an hour, it will have to go back to the Senate. If so, please take a stand for us. She's the resistance. Steph, did you know that? Did you know that Nancy Pelosi is the resistance? What she's resisting is relief to people for the coronavirus. That's what she's resisting.
You want to know why Joe Manchin always gets what he wants? Because he says, I'm not going to fucking vote for it unless it's what I want.
The excuse is always, oh, well, you know, they put this bill in front of us and people are struggling. And so we just had to vote yes on it.
Yes.
But no, that's your leverage.
You say you all want $15 minimum wage. Prove it. Fight for it.
That's why people like Jank are coming out now and saying if they don't do it now, they're never going to do it. And
what is our mechanism to hold our progressive politicians who we all helped get elected? How do we hold them accountable? Nobody has an idea, and I have an idea. You tell them, I'm going to tell people to stop donating to you. That's my mechanism.
Yeah. If you're not going to fight on this, you're not going to fight on anything.
Justin, didn't AOC say to you directly on Twitter, she said the reason why we're not going to force the vote now is so we can do things like fight for a $15 minimum wage later that can pass, right? Remember she said that to you.
Thank you, Bernie, for folding and not fighting for the $15 minimum wage.
To withhold and use your leverage to fight for working class people against the establishment. That's it. And they won't do it.
If they were Republicans, they would probably fight.
Well, that's all it takes, 6 people to derail any legislation right now, and they won't do it.
You guys are embarrassing, man. You guys are embarrassing. You are on the moral high ground if you fight for it.
Jimmy, can I just say
Yeah.
AOC is doing an impression of a mime trapped inside her own box of lies.
Oh.
Just acknowledge and admit you're not leaders. You're followers. Admit it. Admit it. It's a fact. It's a fact.
And everyone knows that the Justice Democrats aren't going to, they're nutless wonders.
Leaders would fight on this. Leaders would take the fire from the media, would take the fire from leadership.
And those people who defended the squad and defended inaction, like the Young Turks, are taking a fucking hit for it. Thank God.
It's honestly, it really is just pathetic. It's pathetic. If you're not going to fight for this, you're not going to fight for anything.
And I would like to know, what is the leverage he's going to use to force this vote? He could put a hold on the coronavirus relief. Is he going to do that?
There's nothing else to say except your failures.
What is the point of voting for people who don't take corporate money if they just do the bidding of the people who do? The answer is there isn't one.
But they're willing to say it and suggest it without leveraging their vote and fighting. So they don't even understand politics 101.
But nothing is going to change. Nothing.
Or they don't really want it as much as they say they do. They don't really care that much. Those are the only two options. Either they know absolutely nothing about politics, or they know they just don't really care that much.
50 Republicans will vote against it. A large number of Democrats will vote against it. 2, certainly. Manchin and Sinema, probably plenty of others. So what we're saying is, let's do something to be defeated. Is that a strategy? I mean, you know, it's nice to say, I want this, but we're not children.